Hello everyone. This is a tier list video of the moves in Pokemon Generation 1, so red, blue, and yellow. This is kind of a response, I guess, for lack of a better word, to this video by Zensporn, where he did the same thing. He did it in the context of Pokemon Solar Run. So that's where you start with a Pokemon level 5, have a few rules, usually like playing 4 times speed, see how quickly you can get to the champion, and yeah, they like to tier the different Pokemon as well, and see which ones are better or worse. But he also made a tier list of the moves. Now, some moves are only useful in a solo running concept, like Absorb, for example, is useful for some Pokemon to defeat Brock, but is completely useless and outclassed in a competitive context. I've played. I'm not very much an active RBY OU player these days, but I played actively for around about 5 years-ish, around like 2014 to 2019. I ran the RBY community, and I also um, helped develop lower tiers on Pokemon Perfect, which then I'd say some of the people from that, then went on to do similar things in Smogon as well, where unfortunately I've been banned for a very long time, but I still love to see them doing that. So my tier list is going to look very different to Zel's pawns, which is part of why it's interesting, because I will be showing how these moves stack up in the competitive context. And some moves might fare better in this context than in the solo running context, but it will be interesting to see and compare. So you can see I've set this list up so we've got banned ones at the top, and then all the way down to useless. And then there's a couple of moves that are actively detrimental, so you'll never see them in competitive battling by anybody who knows what they're doing. So yeah, here we go. I'm just gonna start off alphabetically. This might be quite a long video, so some stuff that's just like simply outclassed is absorb. Acid armor is kind of an interesting one. Obviously, like my main expertise here is OU, but like I say, I've done some lower tiers. Acid armor is not it's not a very good move. Um, just defense boosting is a lot less powerful than offensive boosting in competitive battling, but it does occasionally like have some use. I don't know, like Vaporeon, for example, can kind of make use of this, but I don't know, this might I don't know, it's a bit weird to put it in like the has potential tier because even though this is maybe not explicitly used on any sets, there are worse moves that do see use, like withdraw and defense curl. So, I mean, why don't we stick those here as well? If there is the weird aspect of distribution here, so you can see we've got a lot of moves to look at. Um, like from a distribution perspective, withdraw is kind of the best one, just because withdraw Slowbro in OU is kind of a decent set. It's not amazing, it's not its main set, but um, at least theoretically in a metagame with a lot of Slowbro, it's a good move. And it has some potential. So um, I mean, to be honest, maybe all of these kind of belong in like the has potential tier only. Um, so yeah, not commonly seen. Defense curl is also a cute move on Chauncey. It normally doesn't have like the moves, the space for it, but it isn't like it does do some things. Obviously, yeah, Chauncey is a massive special ball, so if it's paralyzed, it can be quite hard to break through with defense boosts as well. But then again, a large part of getting through Chauncey is critical hits and full paralysis, and defense call only makes you more resilient against one of those things. It also doesn't help again against like ice beam freezes and so on. So yeah, it's not hugely useful there. But acid armor is not a terrible move. It's just not really used much in practice. Acid sucks, but all poison moves in Gen 1 suck. Apart from like Sludge is also very not very good, but it's more powerful. Um we'll put this at like the back end of has potential because there are scenarios where maybe it can be used poisons offensively a little bit better than it is in later generations since you also hit bugs super effectively. But it's also just, I think, gosh, I know the Gen 1 type chart, like, this is the part of the Gen 1 type which is just, like, almost never relevant. Um, but yeah, it's really not a very good move, but you could theoretically see a use for it. Agility. So I don't know if this is like belongs in like niche or risky. So I guess niche is fine. Like this is kind of one of those moves that just gets used as filler, like on Zapdos and OU, where it's kind of like, okay, there's nothing much better to put in this slot. If I have a free turn, it's better than nothing. Um, in solo running as well, it's worth going over like Withdrawal defense are like really good moves in solo running because of the badge boost glitch, which is basically, when you apply stat boosting move, it reapplies all the badge boosts, so it allows you to like slowly increment your speed and attack power and bulk all at once. That's obviously not a factor in um in OU because when you play competitive battling, neither player has badge boosts. However, there is, it being Gen 1, the wonderful buggy mess that it is, it does let you reapply stat drops. So, for example, it lets your opponent, if your opponent's paralyzed, it'll reapply the attack drop of that. If they're burned, it will reapply, sorry, the speed drop of paralysis, or reapply the attack drop of burns. Now, burns are very rare, because, well, I'll probably get into that more with Fire Blast. Um, so agility is mostly reapplying uh, stat drops, if anything, which isn't that useful. But it also will result in the paralysis drop that you have. If you've got like a paralyzed Zapdos and you would use agility, it'll be as fast as a Zapdos that isn't paralyzed and has used agility. Because it will ignore the paralysis stat drop when it recalculates the stats. However, if your opponent were to then use agility, then that paralysis stat drop would get applied again and you'd be a half speed Zapdos. Uh, Gen 1 is very broken. Um, and it gets worse. But like because of all of that, like agility genuinely not terrible, but it's one of those moves where you're never gonna need to run honestly. Um yeah, not bad. Amnesia is broken. It is absurd that Mewtwo gets it as well. It really is like the most broken Pokemon. All time, Amnesia Mewtwo, yes, take the strongest Pokemon by a mile and let it double its special attack and special defense. Or, well, essentially it's a combined special stat, so it's like a double Calm Mind. Um, it's just a very, very powerful move. It's single, like the weird thing though is that it is like the best move in the game that's not banned, but it doesn't like single-handedly take Pokemon out of being unviable to being viable. Or to an extent, it kind of does that with Slowbro. Sorry, Slowbro. Um, but then you have like Golduck and stuff where like they're still not good Pokemon or Poliwrath as well, even though they have Amnesia because it just doesn't override other problems that they have. You need like, a good typing and good stats and everything for it to still be useful for you. But it's the most broken move. Aurora Beam. This is simply outclassed. This is not a bad move in solo running, but in competitive battling, Ice Beam is just an insane move. Anything less powerful than Ice Beam is just not worth using when it comes to Ice type moves. Barrage as well, horrendous move. Again, not completely useless in solo running, although, yeah, if you have an Execute, would much rather have a Grass move than Barrage. But the multi-hit thing can be slightly useful against Brock. Um, but yeah, competitive battling useless. Barrier, same story as Acid Armor. I don't think even as many useful Pokemon. Um, actually, does Mewtwo? Gosh, I'm not sure. Mewtwo wouldn't even want to run it, but yeah, it's. I'm not even sure what gets it. It's just such an unused move, but maybe just the mime gets it. But yeah, it's just like so poorly distributed. Um, I guess like the thing with like these stop moves moves not being that bad is like when it comes to like reflecting light screen, they kind of work not the same, but like with Reflect in Generation 1, that defense boost will be permanent until you switch out. So, in a lot of ways, it's the same thing as like a defense boost, and it's mostly just a distribution issue that Acid Armor and Barrier are rarely ranked under best potential, whereas like Reflect is a very good move. Because the Pokemon that need defense boosting, namely Chansey and occasionally Snorlax, don't get acid armor and barrier. They do sometimes get defense call, but Reflector ends up being better because you want that immediacy. Anyway, Bide again. Well, this is a weird one. Like, is it strictly useless? It depends how you think about it, because like there's some moves that are like genuinely useless on like a functional level, whereas this one is like it's just useless in practice. There's not going to be any Pokemon where you're going to take 25% of your HP, um, going to be able to get off a bite, and then your opponent either won't be able to KO you or won't be able to take advantage of it. So, like, I don't know. I kind of want to stick it at the end of has potential because I'm not sure it's going to be useless in every situation ever, but like, it's bad. It's bad. Bind. I'm going to stick this under risky. Sequential function moves are absolutely broken in Generation 1. Both from a functional level and in terms of how they play in practice. Bind is the worst of these by far, though, because it does less damage than Wrap. I think it's less accurate as well, and the Pokemon that get it are like Onyx and Pandora, which are also not amazing Pokemon. Pandora's alright, but it suffers from being unable to do much damage, and Bind doesn't help that. But partial traffic moves are often used. They're more often used for pivoting than for sweeping. Dragonite can sweep with Wrap, but Bind is Bind is not ever used for sweeping. It's just used so that if you have an opponent that's slower than you can use Bind, and then you have the option of either staying in and keeping your opponent trapped, or switching to a partner. But it doesn't do much damage. So, like the advantage of it is more using it like a really powerful U-turn button pass type move. But it's inaccurate, which makes it a little bit risky. So, how much value does it really have? It definitely belongs in the risky tier. Like this move does see use, but it's not good. Um, but it's not terrible either. Right? I mean, well, this is just outclass as well. We'll see any normal type move weaker than Body Slam, outside of very specific exceptions where, like, for distribution reasons, they might see use. Is just gonna go in outclassed. Blizzard, like this is a absurd move. 120 base power and 90 accuracy. One of the best defensive types in the game, and can freeze. It's as good as Amnesia nearly. Like the only thing holding Blizzard back apart from the low accuracy slightly, is the low PP, which is legitimately why Ice Beam is sometimes used. And even then, I feel like this is more of an OU thing. Like if your Pokemon gets both of them, the Pokemon that want Ice Beam either want like the almost perfect accuracy or want the extra PP. So like Jinx will always run Blizzard, Lapras will always run Blizzard, Starmie will always run Blizzard pretty much. But Chansey will run Ice Beam because there is a chance that you actually would run out of blizzards. Um, Snorlax as well for the same reason. So Ice Beam is used more for when you need freeze walls. You need the move for freeze walls, whereas Blizzard is used when you mostly want the raw power. And yeah, freezing is a very nice secondary option. Body Slam as well. Um, Again, this is a disgustingly powerful move. Especially in OU though. I think OU flatters it because Body Slam Taurus is filthy. Body Slam Snorlax as well, absolutely filthy. Yeah, these stab moves with massive power, very few things that resist it, and those things that do are usually vulnerable to the coverage of the Pokemon that carry the move. incredible 30% paralysis chance. It is held back by not being able to paralyze other normal types, which makes things like Taurus Ward very risky and so on. But still, like an incredibly powerful move. Um, and yeah, it's the go-to normal type move for most Pokemon that learn it. If they want to run a normal type move, that's the one they're running. Bone Club, Outclass. Bone Meringue, outclassed, but not as outclassed. I mean, let's stick this at the top here. So Bone Meringue becomes kind of a bit better in later generations where Substitute becomes a thing. Substitute does exist in Generation 1, um, but it's kind of niche. I don't know. It's not common enough to warrant running Bone Meringue is the thing. Like, Earthquake is effectively the same power and just more accurate. And the trade-off with Boomerang is accuracy versus substitute breaking, and you just don't really care that much about breaking substitutes. So yeah, that goes there. Bubble Beam. You might think, yes, what this is outclassed by Surf. It's outclassed by Fire. Yes, it is. Potion doesn't get either of those moves, and it does get Bubble Beam. And it's by far its best option to hit Pokemon like Rhydon and Golem. It's niche. Um, Bubble, however, unsurprisingly, is just down here. Clap, however, tough one to decide between must use and solid, right? It's probably the bottom end of must use. So Clamp is interesting. Compared to other powerful trapper moves, it has less PP, but still more than enough. Especially because PP of these moves can roll over. Um in certain circumstances, if you switch when a powerful trapper move is at 0 PP, you can roll back over to 63. Um Lovely Generation 1 glitch that you will never see when you're playing in-game, um, since the AI never switches. But in competitive battling, it is a thing. But it's not really relevant for Clamp because nobody's trying to PP stall Clamp entirely. Well, people are almost never trying to stall it entirely. It's a signature move of the Shelder Cloister line, and Cloister has to run it in OU. It's just too good not to. Um, Poor accuracy holds it back, but the flip side is that in addition to kind of being an effective pivot move like Bino Rampart, it does substantive damage. Yeah, I don't know, like 5 to 10% ish to Chansey. It has been a long time since I've played, so I don't have the calcs really memorized anymore for certain things. But like it does substantive damage, so you can also use it to wear down Pokemon if you really need to. And the fact that it's not a normal type move as well is huge for it. So yeah, must use, but probably at the tail end of it. And maybe the best part for trapping move? Yeah, Comet Punch useless. Confuse Ray risky. So this might seem like it's just a useless move. And or like a move that shouldn't really be in competitive battling. Because it's just put up for attacks. RNG fest. The thing is that Confuse Ray is useful when you're in a situation where you already need variance to win. So it's not really used anymore, but it used to be a staple move on Lapros. The uh, the dividing line with this, by the way, is the end of 2014, when the competitive community learned that Body Slam can't paralyze normal types. So before then, the staple for Lapros was Blizzard, Thunderbolt, Body Slam, Confuse Ray. Body Slam and Confuse Ray together would be useful to try and land paralysis on Chansey and possibly even break through it as well. Um, People have done the maths, and I mean, look, it doesn't turn something that's like less than 50% chance to win into a more than 50% chance. But it's also like it is really isn't useless either. It does belong in the risky category. This risky category is having like kind of an interesting one, like the kind of stuff that fits in there. Confusion. There isn't really any like psychic is really common. Confusion isn't useful. Constrict, possibly the weakest move and worst move in the game. Conversion. What the hell does conversion do? It makes the user the same type. Oh, it makes the user a type that resists the last damaging move. So this is an interesting move. Um, on the one hand, does it kind of have potential? Yes. On the other hand, actually no. On the other hand, like this move isn't. It sounds interesting, but like it's only given to Porygon, and Porygon doesn't want to use it particularly, even though it's a defensive Pokemon. It's interesting. It has potential, but I don't know. I'll put it above Bide. Well, I don't know. Bide is more widely distributed, so maybe it has more potential than conversion. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't. It doesn't see use. Porygon doesn't like to use it. Counter. This is a messy one. So top end of solid. So counter is extremely broken. Um, to the point where if you were to play a Link Battle on cartridge, it is very easy to desync the games using counter, unfortunately. Now the thing is that it is a really useful move competitively. Like Chansey loves running counter. You should see it on like 10 to 20% of chances maybe. Snorlax can even run it occasionally, against other Snorlax and Tauros. Maybe a bit niche these days, but it is a move that it can learn. Um, and so on. I and it is like really, really broken, really weird. But the competitive community decides to basically patch the desync, which I don't really agree with, but I understand. Um, it is such a broken move in terms of how it's implemented, which is like really a shame. If it was just a little bit less broken, if it didn't cause desync, it would be fine and cool. And like there's weird things that you can counter your own counter. So if your opponent goes to a sleeping Pokemon while you've got a Pokemon that can use counter, and the counter is active, then you can counter your own counter damage and build it up against like sleeping and frozen opponents. And then suddenly your opponent can't switch in because they'll be taking way too much damage, which is extremely neat. Um, there's also, your opponent can make counter active by using a normal fighting type move and practice just a normal type move. And then you can do damage with a separate move. And the condition for counter to be used will still be active. But then you can counter your own move's damage because it will check the opponent's last used attack is a normal fighting type move. And it will check that does damage. And it will check that there's damage in I can't remember what it's called, the damage counter, um, and double whatever's in there. So it's a weird, broken, powerful move. Crab Hammer. Um, so this is a signature move of Kingler, which does hold it back a bit, but Kingler always runs it. The thing is with these signature moves as well is that you do kind of have to think a little bit, what if other Pokemon had access to it? Then it would be disgusting if other Pokemon had access to Crabhammer. Could you imagine Crabhammer's Starmie, Crabhammer Tentacruel, like anything like that? This move will always critical hit. It's a little bit inaccurate, but it doesn't really matter when you're critting every single attack. It's just an absolutely disgusting move. It's not freeze, so maybe lower than Blizzard, but broken move. Um, in a good way. Cut. Outlast, obviously use it for in-game reasons. Dig, the first banned move, so Dig is really useful in your solo runs because it's got the same base power as Earthquake. Um, and it's banned in competitive battling because of the fact that if you get fully paralyzed while you're midway through using a dig or indeed a fly, then you become invulnerable. And the community agrees this is just a bit too powerful to allow. It is a bit weird because it's like, well, you have to run dig on your set and just hope that, you can get into a position where you're fully paralyzed and get to use the move. And then even when you've done that, like how much damage can you really do? It really depends on the Pokemon. The thing is that it does suck that for some Pokemon, this is like their early ground type coverage, like for example for Arcanine. it doesn't get Earthquake, but it does get Dig. And that would let it hit, like, I don't know, like Onyx, or I don't know, what would be a ground, like Omastar. Omastar is a Pokemon it would love to be able to do more damage to, but it can't because of it being green. So really unfortunate. And it's in the same way, it's even more unfortunate with Fly because a lot of Pokemon don't have a good flying type stat apart from Fly, which is not good, but it's at least a stab move that has like a decent base power, which is not a guarantee in this generation. So those ones kind of suck to be banned. Um, it would be kind of better if they didn't have that game breaking bug. Disable. Oh. So I don't know. I guess this can go at the back end of its potential. It's just really inaccurate. You don't get to choose what move you're disabling. Um, in so it's just I don't know. Maybe we need a tier here. If we add a row above the I don't know. I'm just gonna call it interesting. Okay, pause it for the book for a moment to fix that. So these are moves that I guess like they're interesting, but they don't see any competitive use. Um, but like I don't know, maybe it's due to in part this due to distribution, but like they're still interesting. Like I don't like theoretically I could imagine there being a use for them. I just don't know of one or anything that even like considers it. Um, Dizzy Punch, another useless move. Double Edge. Neat. So the main normal type moves the Pokemon want to use a Body Slam and Hyper Beam. If they want more power, then Body Slam Hyper Beam is the go-to because it's a good finishing move. Double Edge is only 100 base power in Generation 1. Not that much stronger than Body Slam. It becomes 120 in, I think, Generation 2. Um, so, yeah, it has a downside. Not that much more powerful than Body Slam. But the thing is, some Pokemon don't get access to Body Slam, and for them, Double Edge is sometimes the best option. Um, like Exeggutor sometimes runs it to hit Jinx. Still the only move it runs to do that, though. But yeah, in the same vein, Double Kick is also a niche move. Um, this is Jolteon uses it as coverage for hook pops in OU. It's not an amazing move, just like 25% maybe if you're lucky. Um, but it has a place. Um, you're not mad if you get it. It is powerful enough to act as coverage when you literally have nothing else better, which is not as much as you can say for some other moves here. Double slap, useless. Double team, broken. Evasion is disgusting in competitive battling. My God, just like the most broken thing that Game Freak ever came out with, and they have come out with a lot of broken things. Um, it's just extremely degenerate. And there's not much counterplay. They did slowly add more bits of counterplay in later generations, but like not much, not enough. So yeah, Dragon Rage. Dragon Rage is useless, but it's also it's broken if you're playing like level 5, right? Um, so it's a weird one. Fixed damage moves kind of exist in the way that you would never expect them to be useful in competitive battling. Throw Eater, this move is not used and is only slightly stronger than Psychic. It does interestingly see usage in Generation 2 a little bit, like on Jinx in GSCOU. Sometimes uses it. Because of the HP recovery and sleep is so common there because rest sleep talk is just a powerful, powerful combination there. So Dream Eater's not unheard of in Generation 2. In Generation 1, nothing uses this. It's sleep clause, um, you're not allowed to set more than one of your opponent's Pokemon to sleep, so that does kind of limit its utility. Um, and rest is just not common enough in Generation 1 to make this worth considering for this slightly better power, even as like a filler move, really. Drill Peck. Uh, must use best flying type attack. Not many Pokemon get access to it, but if they do, they use it. Dodrio Zapdos love it. Next, Earthquake. Um, up here, maybe even better than Body Slam. So this thing is like why this is an insane move. Widely distributed, 100 base power, perfect accuracy, one of the best defensive types in the game. If you're a resistor, like it's only in recent years that people even started really using teams that don't have a resist to this in OU. Um, it's just a really powerful move. If you get it, you almost certainly use it. Like any physical attacker wants this move. Egg Bomb. This is niche. This isn't really seen in solo running, but it is an option on. I mean, maybe we can stick this at the top of Red Risky even. Because the problem is it's the same power as Double Edge, no recoil, but it's less accurate. Only hits 75% of the time. So Executor again can use this to hit Jinx, and it's a trade-off of recoil versus accuracy. Um, it's an interesting trade-off. But yeah, I'm sticking it in risky. Ember useless. Explosion must use. Um, Explosion is a bit of an odd one because it does get, in some ways, it gets even stronger in generations 2 to 4, where it's like the base powers increase massively. At the same time, it's still strong enough to Oko things with strong explosion users like Golem. Self-destruct as well, same deal, but it's obviously weaker. But yeah, really powerful move, but obviously fire risk, fire reward, but it belongs up here. Fire Blast. Okay, and let's stick this at the top end of risky because like I kind of want to capture like with risky stuff where there's like significant risk in using them of things like actively going wrong. So with like Egg Bomb, you have like the accuracy. With bind as well, you have the accuracy. Confuse Ray is just trying to increase variance. Fire Blast is the best fire type move, but the 30% chance to burn is actually often seen as a negative, at least in OU. Um, so in OU especially, your soda strategy is extremely important. Normally that involves paralysis. Occasionally it just involves sleep and freeze with a little bit of paralysis sprinkled in, maybe. Um, Fire Blast onto a Pokemon like Starmie or Chansey can be a game losing problem, which makes using something like Moltres, which relies on Fire Blast for damage, very risky. Not impossible, but you have to be very thoughtful using this move. It also can thaw opponents. So when you've got a frozen Pokemon, is basically dead, with the exception of if your opponent has Fire Blast or God forbid Haze, or indeed Fire Punch and Flamethrower. Um, so you risk throwing opponents, you risk landing a status of Pokemon you don't want. It does get better in lower tiers. When recovery moves become less common, burning things becomes less bad. And also you have Pokemon with like much worse coverage at that point. Fire Punch, it's just outclassed. I mean, I guess technically Hitmonlee gets it and doesn't get like Flamethrower and Fire Blast. Does Electabuzz? I don't think Electabuzz. No, Electabuzz doesn't in without trade backs, which actually is the whole other thing. Like trade backs, which is where you get Pokemon from Generation 2, trade them with Stadium, I think, and then trade them back into Generation 1. You can access certain moves through that, like for example, Hypnosis on Persian, or Lovely Kiss on Snorlax, or Fire Punch and Ice Punch on Hypno. So I guess I'm gonna stick this at the top of interesting because it really kind or maybe even niche. It's like this is I'll put it here. Like it's a worse Fire Blast, but some Pokemon do get access to it, but mostly just through trade backs. Um yeah, there's some weird edge cases. The standard in competitive Pokemon is mostly playing in um, without trade backs. It's not that trade backs are necessarily like good or bad, but it does, it just massively changes things in terms of who learns what. So yeah, mostly going to be assuming no trade backs, but in a couple of cases where it's relevant, I'll mention it, but we'll take note of that. Fire Spin, this move is better than Bind and maybe Fire Punch, but definitely worse than like these moves. So Fire Spin is another inaccurate partial typing move that has the benefit of not being normal type, but the accuracy is appalling. The power is nothing to write home about. There is an interesting synergy of Fire Blast and Fire Spin that you'll sometimes see on like Moltres, which is that if you do burn something, then you can use Fire Spin to tick over the damage. Again, the same thing with Toxic. But Paralysis is so much better that it's still not really a significant advantage most of the time. But worth noting, Fisher. Oko moves abound in competitive battling. I don't know how broken they really are. Um, I guess the idea of lead Fisher Dog Trio, while not reliable, is a little bit obnoxious. Grab Horn Drill as well. Shit Cold doesn't exist in this generation, does it? So no, those are the three. Fisher, Guillotine, Horn Drill. Some people pronounce it Guillotine. I think Guillotine is correct. Flamethrower. I'll stick it here. I don't think some Pokemon would likely just have the option of having a reliable stab move like Moltres, but at the same time, it's still usually better to have Fire Blast for the raw power, and again, it can throw opponents. Flash. I'm gonna stick this above Acid. Well, actually, well, no, below Acid. Like, I do know the theoretical use for this, which is specifically in Ubers, because Mewtwo versus Mewtwo matchups are obviously basically every battle. And you often end up in Freezer with like Amnesia, Ice Beam, Recover, and then Thunderbolt or Psychic, depending on what you want to do more damage to, Chansey or like Slowbro. Um, Flash is a hilarious move that you can use in the Mewtwo Ditto to make it harder for your opponent to freeze you. You obviously are sacrificing a move slot and using Flash or Mewtwo, but it does have a theoretical usage in an actual tier that people play. So I can't put it lower than just has potential. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's funny and it does do something in a matchup that happens every battle in that tier almost. So I can't say it's that bad. Um, the accuracy is obviously bad as well. Focus energy. Detrimental. This lowers your crit rate. Even though in theory, maybe sometimes that's something you might want. Like, I don't know, like Slowbro would love to lower crit rate, but when I say love, it's like if you could just snap your fingers and make that happen without giving off a moveset, it would do it because it never wants to crit when it's boosted with amnesia, right? But it's never worth a move slot, and it's actively detrimental for most Pokemon most of the time. So one of the special features in that category, which I wanted to split out, was like, yeah, you would be better off running double slap than focus energy. Fury swipes as well. Funnily enough, this does have a small niche in later generations, but not here. Glare, so um, solid. Paralysis moves suck in game. If you're trying to speedrun things, it's very rare. Like you're really using a kind of a slower, weaker Pokemon if you're relying on paralysis in game. In competitive battling, it's good. It doesn't care about ghost types being immune as well, which is a bit of a weird. I think Thunder Wave is affected by the ground immunity. I can't remember if Glare is affected by the ghost immunity. Either way, yeah, I don't think it is. Maybe, maybe not. I'm trying to think. Arbok and Ghastly. I played with the pair of them dealing in what was called RBY for you years and years ago, but I can't remember the details of that interaction. Didn't really matter because Arbok, well, no, I guess Ghastly outspeeds Arbok. Does it? I think so. So, but anyway, Primus is feeling really good in Generation One. It's just a bit inaccurate, um, but it's up there with like Counter. Growl, weirdly, kind of useful in Generation Two, on Miltank, but in Generation One, it's just a slow move that doesn't really have like any real specific use cases, but it's not like it does something useful. It's just, debuffs aren't as good when your opponent can switch out, but that means that the use of debuffs is to make your opponent switch out. But most of the time, you're better off just dealing direct damage in some way, or threatening status, or something like that in Generation One, because Pokemon's usually have some sort of explodable weakness greater than, oh no, please don't lower my attack. Growth. So I'm just gonna stick this in solid, like here. Like on paper, well, it's effectively got the same effect as Calm Mind, but the Pokemon that get it don't want to use it most of the time. Generally it's distributed on grass types, which either have Razor Leaf, which crits all the time, or almost all the time, so you don't want to use it, or one don't have Razor Leaf, in which case their best move is probably Mega Drain, like for Tangela. And it's like, okay, sure, you can run growth on Tangela. Tangela, I don't know what's right. You can run on that, but like your most powerful move is a base 40 power attack. It's not that good. It's not useless on paper. It's a powerful move, and like if a lot more, I don't know, if like Starmie had growth, it would be broken. But then Starmie is already a disgustingly good Pokemon. Um, but I mean, I guess there's an argument for it there. But in practice, it's just not used that much, um, for distribution reasons, even though it isn't like a signature move. So, but it's also the effect is too good not to put it below solid. Gust. If this was flying type, it would actually be a good move even with no other changes. You like it, well, I don't know about like good, but like Zoom Golbat would use it in lower tiers, for example, or Pidgeotto, Pidgeot. They wish this was flying type. Harden, same place as Defense Curl and Withdrawal. Again, I don't think anything specifically uses Harden. Oh, I guess Snorlax gets Harden. I don't know, it's slightly better than Defense Curl Chansey. Yeah, those are. It's theoretically interesting, but not really used in practice. Hey, it's detrimental. This thing does so many weird and wonderful things. In game, it will reset your badge boosts. In competitive battling, it'll also well, that's the only thing that's exclusive to in game. But in general, it will reset all stat boosts, including the paralysis, speed drop, and burn attack drop. It will also clear your opponent of any status. So if your opponent's got a frozen Pokemon or a paralyzed Pokemon, you're clearing their status for free in order to neutralize their stats. Could theoretically be useful. I guess you could maybe use it against a Slowbro, like an Amnesia Slowbro, but like the risk of throwing stuff of God knows what else, like it's just actively detrimental under most circumstances, so it goes here. Even though maybe it does have a little bit of potential. Headbutt. I'm gonna stick this in interesting. There's not really anything that needs to use this. Um, things Pokemon still prefer Body Slam. But like I don't know, if Victoria's got Headbutt, it would possibly use it occasionally. It does get Stomp and it never really uses that though. Flinches are nice, but they're not like enough. It's more useful to do something that will threaten Pokemon switching in than something that will keep threatening what's already in the first place. But it has some a little bit of potential. So high jump kick. Um, I don't know, solid maybe must use. I mean, it's Hitmonlee's best move. Uh, um, it's just other normal types wish that they had it. It's kind of the story, which is like a shame with like fighting types. It's not that there's bad fighting type moves, but the widely distributed ones are awful in like ways that are kind of unique to fighting type moves. Hydro Pump. So this one, I'm gonna stick this in solid. So in OU, is this move seen a little bit? Like Starmie can use it. If you're using these Pokemon like Gyarados or Tentacruel, they can use it. Um, it is like the best widely distributed water move, but water's always worse than ice, except when you just really want a stab move. So yeah, it just goes in solid. Hyper Beam. I'll put it here as well. So the the way in which with Hyper Beam, if you KO opponent, you don't have to recharge, is extremely powerful. But it also gives it like an insane risk reward. So yeah, you can hyper beam when your opponent switches to Rhydon, and then suddenly you take a massive earthquake with your Tauros against your Tauros. For example, like it does provide an interesting risk reward as well. As like, what if you've got a damage range instead of just a guaranteed KO? Or what if you miss? I think Hyper Beam is an amazing move conceptually. I wish that they didn't fix this bug in future generations, and instead that you have like Blast Burn, Hydro Cannon, and Giga Impact and so on working like Hyper Beam does in Gen 1. Because I think the risk rewards associated with that is really skill intensive and interesting. Um, but yeah, it's a powerful move. Um, Anything that gets it and wants to use a physical attack uses it. It's generally restricted to like fully evolved Pokemon, which is kind of funny in the sense that it's common in OU and it still sees use in tiers below that. But like the further down you go, the rarer it gets to the point where you're only fully evolved Pokemon like Hitmonlee and Onix, no, or like Hitmonchan and Onix and stuff like that. So when that starts to happen, it starts to fall off just simply because many Pokemon don't learn it. But it's a good move. And helped by like the wide distribution. Hyperfang. Yeah, put it here. I don't know, it's not like it's dreadful, but Body Slam's just better. Um, on like Eradicate. Hypnosis, so solid is kind of a funny word for hypnosis, but like sleep is broken. Um, it's just hypnosis is like quite inaccurate, but Gengar still basically must run it. Um, Anything that gets it runs it unless they have a more accurate move. Ice Beam. I don't know, Freeze is just disgusting. I guess I don't know. Like the thing is that again, Blizzard is more powerful. Ice Beam has higher PP. Most of the time, you prefer more power. But like then again, in OU is the most played tier. Chances on almost every team, and most chances are on Ice Beam. You can't like in practice, it's one of the most used moves and one of the best moves. Even though you know it might be worse than Blizzard in a lot of circumstances. In the most common circumstance, it's the best move, so it has to be at least this high. We get the feeling this is going to generate like a lot of conversation below. I'm also going to do what Zealous did and cut this off around about an hour in, and then release a part two. In fact, maybe once we get past M, I'll do that. Ice Punch, like same story as Fire Punch, but again, like a lot less risky. It's just like a distribution thing. Like nothing really gets it that doesn't have Ice Beam in outside of trade backs, except for Hitmonchan, which has useless specials, so it doesn't matter. But let's stick it in niche as like an acknowledgement that like, if you're playing with trade backs, this suddenly becomes a very good move to use a certain Pokemon. Oh, like Alakazam gets it as well, I guess, in trade backs. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe even just stick it at the tail end of Solid. Like it's not a bad move. It's just not distributed well outside of trade backs metagames. Jump kick, like again, this is fine, but poorly distributed. I mean, I don't know, maybe even just like has potential. It's not a bad move, but it's also just not. It's just like a Hitmonlee exclusive, I think. Karate chop. So like normal type moves that always crit. aren't that bad. Karate Chop's just a bit weak. If this was a fighting type move, it would be at least a niche. Kinesis. I think this goes above Confuse Ray, below Bind. So this is exclusive to like Alakazam, Kadabra. I don't know if Abra can get it, but um they don't never use it, but it's usually better off if you don't run it. However, like it is kind of fun in Alakazam Dittos or against Starmie or to mess with like I don't know, like Lead Jinx trying to sleep you. But it's not good and you would rather have Seismic Toss. So yeah. Leech Life oh Leech Life is annoying to place. Like bug type moves are so rare that this is often the best bug type move that Pokemon get. And that are 4 times weak to bug Pokemon, like Oddish or whatever. So I don't know, like Parasect can maybe use it, but I'm gonna stick it below Acid because it's one of those moves that you can use on really specific Pokemon in really specific circumstances when everything lines up. But that's what's required to make a 20 base power move work. But it only is even possible because bug type moves are that poorly distributed, which is a shame because it's an amazing offensive type. Leech Seed. I want to put it below Leech. No, I don't know. I'll put it here. So Leech Seed. Leech Seed is an amazing move in like Generation 3 onwards. In Generation 1, it only does like 6% damage, which is not very much. Obviously, it's cancelled out by switching. Um, the other thing as well is that it won't do damage on the turn that you use it unless the opponent's Pokemon's already slower. Is that it only does damage when your opponent uses a move. Or at least tries to, I think. I don't remember if a Pokemon full paralyzes if it does Leech Seed damage. Um, so like it's just not reliably doing what it's kind of supposed to do. There is a hilarious bug if you toxic poison a Pokemon, like badly poison a Pokemon with toxic, and then you leech seed, then the leech seed damage will match the badly poisoned damage. So you'll be doing like 6% with toxic on the first turn, then you leech seed on the second turn, and then suddenly you're doing 25%. Then you're doing 37.5% and 50%. It's like, wow, that sounds broken. It's like the toxic doesn't work properly in Gen 1. Your opponent switches out then back in, it resets to regular poison. So your opponent has to be an idiot, unfortunately, for the Toxic Leech combo to work. And it's also like a bit too slow to really use in solo running and a bit too niche. Because you get Toxic quite late, at which point you generally have better options. I would love to see it used in solo running though. Like I'm sure there must be a use for it somewhere, the Toxic Leech Seed bug. Because it's really funny and like really powerful if your opponent doesn't switch, which is not true of humans. Maybe it has use in like RBY 1v1 actually, which I don't think anybody really plays. But it's kind of a funny idea. Um yeah, Toxic would be better in RBY 1v1 as well, actually. So I don't know, I have to stick that in past potential. But it's also set on Executor and OU Stun Spore Psychic Leech Seed Rest. I tried it, it's just not very good. Actually, I don't know, should this be higher? I don't know, like maybe it should be. It's tough to say. I don't know. Maybe that just needs to be further down. I think. Yeah, Leech Seed, awesome bug, but in practice, it's not really very good. Oh, actually, the one reason why, well, I don't know. Maybe I should stick this in like in here actually. So like actually, like the thing with that Exeggutor is it's the best set kind of against Slowbro, which is like kind of a weird Pokemon that always hovers around like 8% usage or whatever. It's like a good Pokemon, but kind of awkward structurally to fit, and kind of just like a more like sits on its own and either sweeps or it doesn't. But Leech Seed Exeggutor is like the best way to deal with that in some sense because it resists all the moves that Slowbro is usually running, and then with Leech Seed you're doing HP recovery and Or if you can force Slowbro out, then it's basically done for anyway. So I don't know. I guess I kind of have to move that up. It's tier lists are obviously like very subjective, and the thing that makes it interesting anyway is like discussing them. Like the fun thing is like I don't know if people watching this either like competitive players who are newer or like solo runners who haven't seen certain sides of the game that competitive players have seen. It's like getting to talk about those things is what makes this interesting. Um, More than like exactly where stuff should go. Although I am autistic, I do love ordering things, but obviously don't treat this as gospel as well. Lear has potential. There is a ride-on set that can use it, but like it's just not worth it normally. But it is a funny option to exist. Um, I'd say it's better than Growl, but not much better than Growl. Like I don't know, you can use it to pressure like reflect Chansey with ride-on. But it's only kind of useful in a meta game where you have Pokemon that are bulky and setting up and trying to be immovable walls, which really is something only OU has. Because you've got Reflect Chance, you've got Reflect, maybe Reflect Amnesia, Snorlax, you've got um, Slowbro sometimes with the Withdraw Amnesia set even. I think yeah, you wouldn't really want this against that. You'd maybe want it against the non-withdrawal sets, which use Thunderwave instead. But it's not worth a move slot normally. It's interesting. And like Rhydon as well is like a Pokemon that like you can kind of justify dropping one of its moves, but I don't know, like any move you drop is going to be more useful than Lair is the thing. Lip is like a worse leech life. Um, Ghost like normal Amazonic types, the two best types are immune to it, but it is like super effective against like the ghost types. But in practice, well, I don't know, I'm just gonna say this is interesting about like bide because it's like in practice you never need it. Um, but it does exist as a move to hit ghost types. Just ghost types are so is limited to a single line. They're quite good Pokemon. So when you get to the point with Pokemon with like really constricted move calls that might consider lit, the ghost types already don't exist. Light screen. There is light screen Chansey in Ubers. That is a thing. I really recommend it. Amnesia is far better, but like I don't know, it's got potential at least. I don't know, it feels weird ranking like Fire Blast and stuff like so low here. Like I don't know, maybe I only want to move Fire Blast up. I don't know, I just feel it feels a little bit wrong just having that just in risky. Lovely Kiss, must use, broken move. Jinx gets it. It's insane. We have Sleep Claws for a reason. Okay, this is starting to get a little bit harder to keep everything on screen. And I'm gonna stop it. We'll do low kick and then we'll stop it there. Low kick. This move doesn't really see use, but it's kind of interesting and it's a little bit better distributed than other things. And it has like a flinch chance. So I'm gonna stick it here below like the defense use boosting moves. It's kind of an interesting option on Primeape in lower tiers, maybe. But yeah, I'll leave it there and there'll be a part 2 video. Coming, I guess, a day or two after this.